Hey, it's Miggy, and let's talk about the new patch. Kalea just got released, and there are a lot more changes we have to check out. Before we break down the patch, where do you find the patch notes in the MLBB homepage? First, you gotta click on Events. Next, you gotta look at the four icons. You're gonna pick the last one. And there you have it. Here are the patch notes for this Kalea patch. And in this video, we're going to be going down the hero adjustments and the battlefield adjustments. Just a quick FYI, I did a quick skim of the patch, and I'm here to just point out what I think will be meta-defying, esports changing, and whatever I feel like has an impact on the current meta. So with that being said, let's talk hero adjustments. So right off the bat, we get to see a new and revamped hero. Kalea enters the fray. So I might potentially make a new video about this or an upcoming video about this, but just so you know, Kalea is here. She is potentially a roam or XP lane hero, and she has a lot of crowd control and a lot of utility that plays around with positioning, your positioning or your opponent's positioning. So she's a bit sticky as a hero. So we'll get into that maybe in a future video. So for the hero adjustments overall, I want to be highlighting 3 changes or 3 buffs, nerfs, or balances that may potentially shake up the meta. So the first one being Pharsa. So as you see on the screen as it's displayed, she got a buff. Her skill 1 now reveals marked enemies. Her ulti is a lot stronger because of the fact that it can reduce the intervals of spiritual unity by 1 second. And Wings by Wings' movement speed is increased from 135% to 155%. So what does this mean for Pharsa? Right now, if you guys are watching the esports scene, the MPL, you get to see that Pharsa is actually one of the chosen heroes or one of the picked heroes, though not entirely the most meta, is still meta viable. With these changes, you can expect her to be picked a lot more because for one, she's a lot more survivable now. Early game to mid game, when she still doesn't have her damage, when she's still more or less used for utility and zoning out. Because her skill 1, as it says, it reveals marked enemies' positions. So you can use this as a way to protect yourselves when you're laning. So you get to show who's in the bush, check bush without actually face checking it. And if you do get ganked, because a lot of the jungle heroes are mobile right now, like Suyo and Joy, Wings by Wings gives you access to a very healthy movement speed buff from 135 to 150. That is actually enough of a movement speed buff to prevent any early game kills on you. And late game, as they adjusted and they buffed your early game, you're now able to survive and have a better farm potential when it comes to the late game. And when you enter the late game, your ultimate's passive is just gonna help you land snowball, deal more damage a lot more to the opponents. So that's one. The second one I want to discuss is Brody. Though you can see that it is a buff, but we don't see any damage buffs or making him tankier. But we did see Badang enter the meta because of the changes to his backswing. So I feel like that's what's gonna be happening to Brody. Because let's face it, Brody is one of, if you think early to mid game gold laners, you think Brody because of how explosive, how bursty his damage is. And with the reduction of the backswing on his skills, will mean that he's a lot more smooth. His movement's gonna be a little less clunky, and it's gonna be a lot easier to manage or control his mobility, in a sense, when casting his skills. So I believe because of these changes, Brody might just potentially be a meta pick in the upcoming season. Last but not the least, I want to talk deeper about Chip. So with Chip, though he was not as viable as the others because of his mobility. Sure, he boasts the mobility when he activates his portals and uses ultis, his stuns. But the problem here is, or the problem with him is, his passive or his gimmick is not utilized as well as it could be because of the long cooldowns. But now, skill 4 effect is you can teleport to any locations only after leaving combat. Meaning, it's a lot more accessible. Chip can use these portals a lot easier. So you might be expecting Chip to show up out of nowhere, ganking your lanes early on. And that's threatening because now he has a global map presence even at level 1, level 2, even before his ulti. More so when he has his ulti. So I believe this chip change is gonna be what's gonna put him as a highly contested pick in the esports scene. With that being said, let's just recap. My 3 picks are Farsa, Brody, and Chip as the ones with the changes that could potentially bring them into the meta game. Now with that being said, let's move on to battlefield adjustments. Here, I feel like I'm going to be spending a lot of time here in the emblem scene or in the battlefield adjustments because there are a lot of changes that could potentially change up hero builds, could shake up how games are played, how long games are, or how well teams could, understand this patch. So for emblems, I think the most I want to talk about, or the most in need to talk about, is Focusing Mark. We know that it is a support emblem, but it tends to be lackluster compared to Concussive Blast. Concussive Blast gives impact in a sense of damage, in terms of damage, so that's why a lot of roams pick it. But Focusing Mark's change could make it a viable alternative to Concussive Blast. So if you guys are reading the same way this patch as I am, they added another effect to Focusing Mark, which is a movement speed boost, a 10% movement speed boost, which means when someone is marked with Focusing Mark, redundant, not only do they take more damage from your allies by 6%, but they also gain a 10% movement speed, which means it's a lot easier to secure kills when your teammate uses Focusing Mark as an emblem. So maybe Kaja might be brought back. Who knows? A lot of the single hero pick-off skills are gonna be more viable because of this, because it's gonna be a lot easier to secure kills because of that 10% movement speed buff. And I think that's the only thing I want to be talking about here in the emblems portion. But here, this is gonna be a big macro gaming change. The Lord change here is, okay, long story short, if you guys are reading the wall of text, basically it means the Lord will no longer evolve during the 12-minute mark. It will only evolve, quote unquote, when you reach the 18-minute mark. That means you'll be like, oh, but the 8-minute Lord is weak compared, it has no charge. That's the thing. They merged the power potential or the power scaling of the 12-minute Lord. They halved it a bit, I'd say, or they balanced it, or they averaged it, and combined it with the 8-minute Lord. So the 8-minute Lord now has the ability to charge at turrets, but it's only at 30% of the turret's max HP. Sure, it's a bit of a change because you're gonna be expecting the same thing, everything else, but then you gotta consider 80 minutes. It's gonna realign with the 80-minute Lord of last patch or previous patch. So what does that mean? In a macro gaming sense, you're gonna have to put you cannot just give away the first Lord. You really have to contest it because whoever gets it may have the capacity to end the game. With games happening 12 minutes, ending at 12 minutes to 15 minutes, getting that early game Lord could end the game earlier, or it could extend it if you do not get it. It is a hard contest, games could prolong even beyond 80 minutes because you're waiting for that Lord evolution. So with that being said, I believe that this is a big macro gaming change. It's going to be adjusting or forcing teams to change their map rotations, map movements, because the 8-minute Lord has just gotten more valuable and your potential comeback is delayed to 18 minutes. So that's it for the Lord. It could potentially shake up the way we play the game because team compositions might change because teams might prioritize the Lord early on, or they will have to prioritize surviving 8 minutes or the early Lord. So we'll see. We'll see how this shakes up because we do have an MPL game coming real soon. So from the Lord play, moving on to our items. So this is a bit, we're gonna breeze through this because number one, Dire Hit. You can say goodbye to those Natalia roams or Hellcourt roams. Hopefully, I have not been a fan of it, but hopefully it changes because Dire Hit is no longer a very selfish roaming blessing, but rather, just like Focusing Mark, you inflict the mark on an enemy target, and then whoever specifically ally, has to deal the damage for them to proc the mark. Yeah, Dire Hit is potentially a no-go for assassin junglers anymore. Maybe Conceal if they really want to sneak up on their opponents. And let's talk defensive items. Though these are attack items, I call them defensive items because these are really for the utility of their abilities and their passives and actives. Wind of Nature's Wind Chant increase from 70 to 90 seconds, which means late game team fights where the gold laners are involved may just be spread a bit further because before you want to take a late game team fight, you want to have your Wind Chant open or online. So because of this 20-second increase, you might be having spread out team fights because you have to stall until these items are up. While Rose Gold Meteor's price is increased, which means you have to consider if it is it's a good early game pickup because 1820 to 2030 is no joke. That is practically one wave of creeps or one wave of minions, and as a gold laner who's trying to activate a lot earlier or XP laner who's trying to activate a lot earlier, Rose Gold Meteor is a utility damage item, so it's really not built for increasing your damage potential in the mid to early game. So because of this change, we might be seeing Rose Gold Meteors being picked up later in the games. Last but certainly not the least, we're going to be talking about the battlefield adjustments. So of course there's visual improvements from the map, but we're going to talk about how the turret, so don't be surprised if you guys are playing the games. The turret, when triggered, the tier 3 turret or the inhibitor turret triggers, it knocks you back, knocks enemy minions back. Don't be surprised when that happens to you. But as we saw that the gold lane is riddled with a lot of flash farmers or wave clearers, in this patch we see a bit of gold reduction just because they want to, delay the timings of these gold laners because they probably want, the goal of this patch is probably to extend the game a bit more because a lot of the changes are skewing towards that they want survivability in the mid to early game, and they want to see a lot more late game potential or late game gameplay. Because here, as we see here, Scavenger Crabs, gold reward reduced by 20%. At least it doesn't punish you. It balances it out because it doesn't punish you if you lose the first Scavenger Crab. While the first 10 waves of the siege minions in the gold lane, I'd say it's a pretty even toss. I'd say it's because if it's a Harith versus a Granger, of course, they want to get their items real quick, real fast. So that doesn't really change. I think it balances the lane. But the Scavenger Crab change is pretty good. It's a positive change because though it did get nerfed, at least you don't see a lot of gold laners snowballing because they miss out on 1 crab, 2 crabs. Late game items are gonna be timed a bit later. They're gonna be a few seconds delayed or so, and which will likely promote the late game. So with that being said, I'd say this patch is pretty balanced. Of course, every patch is until you start seeing how the pro players play it. But the changes are well merited. I like the changes to a lot of heroes because they're gonna break into the matches, they're gonna break into the meta. And the lore changes, we're gonna see a lot more gameplay then. We're gonna see a lot more active early game gameplay. But we're also gonna be seeing a very active late game, I believe. So gone are the games ending at 12 to 15 minutes. We might be seeing 10-minute games or 20-minute games. I think that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna be ending early or ending late. So with that being said, this is Miggy, unscripted, unfiltered. If you guys like this type of patch breakdown, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this current patch, and I'll catch you guys next time.